All right, good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Bill with World Bible School, and welcome to Kingdom Dynamics. Hey, it's good to see folks joining us already, and we're expecting a lot more people to watch tonight as we get going here. Tonight, back with me is my buddy Apostle Brian Christian from God knows where, rest stopping at who knows where. But hey, good to see you tonight, guy.
It's good to be seen, and thank you for having me, Bishop. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's so much fun to get with you. I want to just, uh, and I wish we'd have had a little more time before the show, but because I don't know how far I can go with this without stepping over a line. But you did make a post on Facebook recently about had to do with a commitment that you had made to God some time back, which I think really has a real importance on tonight's show, because I want to talk about that if we could just to start, and and then we will segue into tonight's teaching. I want to say that Apostle Brian not only is a seasoned minister of many years, but he is also a professor with the World Bible School University, and we're getting ready Monday to start a new block of classes, and so much going on. Good to see Dr. Fay joining us tonight, and good to see Chaplain Shane Gabbert, who will be on with me in the morning for a single show, and getting a lot of things redone and rescheduled, and computer work and hard drive straightened out and all of that kind of stuff. So it's getting there. So let me just say this so that this will be embedded not only on Facebook, but it will be forever in the archives of our YouTube ministry channel. What was it that happened? If you don't want to talk about it, you just say, I don't want to talk about it, but you've already made it kind of public information. This
Yes.
commitment you made to the Lord and has to do with your present state of travel, and what's the update and where we're going from here.
All right. So are you referring to the post where God and I are making a deal about another child and the RV? Is that the one you're
That's
referring
the
to?
one.
Okay.
That's
All right.
amazing.
So
Me and God are
so
making a deal.
yeah,
I've heard that
I used
before.
to think I was making a deal all the time, but he played along. Um, but I'd say about 7 8 months ago, the Lord, I was always open for a daughter. And actually, I thought my second son was going to be a girl. We'd have a boy, a girl, we're done, we're good. But it ended up being two boys. And I know my wife and I were anticipating a girl. But in the RV we're in, it's kind of small. I can't really build it any taller. I've done all I can do. And so the Lord kind of speaks to me, and He says, and this is one thing I want people to know: God's never going to give you a command. You have to have a child, and so people get stuck with that, just like you have to marry this person. He's not a desperate God that's trying to get you to do something or manipulate you. And so He
Right.
comes to me and He says, hey, if you want to have a daughter, the next one will be a daughter. And I said, that would be great, Lord, but I have no place to put a daughter. If you'll help me get a new RV, I'll have a daughter. And he said, if you'll have a daughter, I'll help you get a new RV. and and so it kind of went back and forth. And so not long, I think it was right around February, March, we were looking for an RV. I kind of forgot about having a child. Let's just go ahead and look for an RV, And I posted it. It was the Outlaw. It's Thor Outlaw. It's a 2 bedroom, or it's got a garage that has beds in it, and then it's got the living room and loft. And anyway, it sleeps 10 people. Now, this was kind of a combo situation here, in which much of our team, and we have teams all over different states that are
Right.
ordained under our ministry, that are knit together with us, and that will fly out every 3 to 4 months to whatever state we're in and minister with us and spend time with us. Problem is they have to work a lot of extra hours. They have to then take time off of work. So it has been quite a price they've had to pay to come out, get hotels, rental cars, these types of things. And, and they all can't just go out and do what we're doing with an RV.
Right.
And so what we wanted to do, and we've noticed this difference when our team is in town, there is an increase that brings a way more powerful impact, a lasting impact on the people. And there's just something about the fruit in your life of those that have been connected to you and those that I've, fathered. My wife is mothered in the spirit, that you see that fruit. And what it does is it brings people into a greater impact, greater connection, and there's just instant fruit. And we see that when my wife and I are just ministering as well, but greater impact when the team is there. So it was a combination. Yes, our RV is old. We've been to 2006. We've been in it for 7 years. I've beat the hell out of this thing. I've done everything I can to make as much room as possible. And we've even had people sleeping on our floor in here when they visit. But we just felt like the Lord wanted to give us a new one. So we did a post and right before the pandemic really started closing things down. And as soon as we did the post, that's when the pandemic hit. And so I just kind of thought, well, people aren't going to want to sow into this. They're now dealing with loss of jobs and trying to get finances themselves. So I just put it on the back burner. Fast forward and up to last week, I think it was last week, we just keep putting money into the RV. And again, it's not in bad shape. It's in good shape. I plan on selling it. But we just feel like, why invest in it if we need something bigger, something that will be twofold for another child and for our team to travel with us. And so we were going over to our friend David's house, David Joseph King. We had got there a day early, and we gave the kids showers, and you know how it is. You have the shower head that goes off and on. So, my wife turned the shower head off, forgot to turn the water off. The tanks were closed. I just filled up the freshwater tank, and we took off for 6 hours. Well, there was only enough room for 35 gallons in the gray water tank, and we had 70 gallons of fresh water. So if you can imagine, close to 30 to 40 gallons of water overflowed into the kids' room and the hallway. Now, I think it took a while because it was at just a tiny drizzle, but I didn't know how long it was on there. So we run in, we're ripping up floors. I had already had rubber flooring in the kids' room, which helped a lot, but it got up underneath some of it. So I ripped it all up. We got out the dehumidifier fans, all of that. I'm kind of freaking out. I'm triggered. I'm like, it doesn't hit you till it hits you that if anything happens to this RV, it brings us to a halt. It's our only home, and it's the way in which we travel and do ministry. And if you've priced RVs, they're not cheap. And so I'm kind of freaking out, going, oh no, what are we going to do? Is the floor going to buckle? So I did a post on it. I wasn't going to post on it. I was just going to say it's probably not that bad, but I couldn't sleep all night. And I get up and I'm like, you know what? I need the body of Christ support. I need their prayers. I'll go ahead and look like a fool and be a fool, whatever I need to be. So I post on there and I said, look, I don't know what's going to happen. We might be brought to a halt. And I did this post. Well, we headed on over, or I got a call from David Joseph King before we headed back over for Friday. And I had already texted him the information, and he said, so how much do you think it'll cost if the subfloor is ruined? And I've already priced it at about $4,000, not counting ripping everything out and rebuilding what I just built in 6 months before, which was a $1,500 build. Okay. And so he goes, okay, so you need at least 6, right? He said, how much would you need for a down payment on a new motorhome? And I guesstimated, I said anywhere from $12,000 to $14,000, I think would be the minimum down payment on a motorhome to finance, because we're talking a used one starts at about 90,000. You know, and I did find one for 79,000. We're actually going to see tomorrow in Spokane, and it's a 2014. I prefer used. Why spend all that money? Brand new, the same RV is $250,000.
Wow.
So 79,000 is nothing compared to that. And so anyway, me being bummed out, I don't want to minister. I'm about ready to hand the conference over and start tearing up the floor. This is probably, Bishop, this is my trigger point, is the RV. It's always the RV. You can do anything to me and I'm at peace, but mess with the RV and, you know, that's where my trigger point is. And so, so we get over there and David calls me up to his room and anyway, we go in and Sean and I go in and sit down. I'm actually upset with my wife for leaving the water on, I'll be honest, you know, and told her she's going to help me tear up the floor. Of course, my wife was just very calm about it, very peaceful. She just seemed to be at complete peace. I need to follow her example a little bit more here. And so I get in there and basically, long story short, $14,000 was in cash was handed to me. And all the provision was made that was focusing in on getting another RV. Now, I got to kind of backtrack about 2 weeks before we went. Make it about 3 weeks before we went. So 3.5 weeks ago, you know, I had gone into the doctor in Washington. I've been having a little bit of problems, you know, with the plumbing. Okay, I'll just make it simple, not too graphic. And you know, I'm 49. I'm thinking, okay, I've got some time before I have to get the exam that most guys don't want to get, the prostate exam.
Uh-huh.
And so I go ahead and go in there, and of course I get that, and it floored me. I almost blacked out, almost vomited, sweat from head to toe. And he told me it wasn't normal, and he said my prostate was double the size and that we needed to start medication. Maybe it's an infection. We did all that, didn't change a thing. I'm now being referred to a urologist. Because we live by faith, I was able to get full coverage Medi-Cal or Medicaid in Washington. And so that's why we went to California for the conference, and we're heading right back to Washington. So we're kind of stuck there until we can deal with this thing. But not knowing really what is going to happen, I've looked at every possible procedure and worst case scenario. And by the way, I did get tested for cancer. There is no cancer. I'm good. My dad died of prostate cancer. And so, you know, there's, you know, some concerns. I know we're whole and all that, but I try to use wisdom in what I do. And so we're like, all right, Lord, I believe in miracles. I know you can do it, but until you do it, I'm going to just keep walking through the doors of wisdom and eating right and just getting checked out.
Sure.
And so we're kind of waiting to get into this urologist. Well, before we headed to Redding, I remembered having a daughter, you know, and I'm like, well, I looked at my wife and I said, well, honey, I don't know what the future holds with my ability to have children if I end up having prostate surgery, because there's a big possibility. Most of them, you can become sterile. And so I said, so let's go ahead and just go for it. We'll find a way. We'll find room in the RV, you know. I'm thinking to myself, we're in a pandemic. I shouldn't be considering getting another RV right now. Let's just be frugal, wise. We'll make it work. And then we headed to Redding. So when you put it all together with the money coming in at the timing it did, with the amount that I needed for a deposit, I was able, by the way, a month before all of this happened with the flooding of the RV and this whole transition, my credit wasn't very good. I had maxed out credit cards because of the pandemic. It had slowed us down. We had taken a financial hit. And anyway, a lump sum of money came in, and the Lord said, pay off your debts. So I paid off my debts. And the day before we flooded the RV, my credit jumped to 735, just enough to finance an RV. A week later, 14,000 is handed to me. And this is all saying, let's go for a child. I took it as it's pretty obvious here. We're supposed to go forward with this. And, so here we are now, and now begins the search. And again, we did find one in Spokane. It's a 2014 Thor Outlaw, 38.5 feet, 4 slides. It has sleeping room for 10. And we could take some of our team with us, 3 to 4 people, maybe even 5 people for a couple of weeks at a time, and make a greater impact, including our worship team. Okay. And this, I believe, is the next step we're supposed to be taking. And but I do believe we're going to still need some help from God's people if they can. Reason being is we want to try to get the payments down as low as possible. I still have to get it financed through the ministry. I do not make any salary in the ministry. It's room and board and traveling expenses. That's it.
Right.
And so we live completely by faith, but the ministry is definitely capable of carrying this RV payment. But it would help if we could put a little bit more down to get those payments down to about $300 to $400 a month rather than $700 to $800 a month. So that's kind of where we're at. So that's the story.
Well, thank you for being so willing to talk about that, because there's not just personal information here, but also there is a lot of times ministry information that's not shared with the public, even though you did make a Facebook post about it. I do want to say this, that the reason I asked you to talk about this is because I want to ask everybody watching, and while there's not a huge amount of people watching right now, even after the show or as this program progresses, a lot more people will jump in and jump out and will hear what's going on. And I would like to ask everybody to give toward this project. I really have problems coming online and asking you to give to my project, but I don't have a problem asking you to give to somebody else's project.
Same
and
here.
So, I really would like to see not a payment at all when everything is all said and done. And I know that there are people out there that have the ability to completely eradicate in full the amount that an RV is going to cost. Because I can say this, that for 10 years or more, Apostle Brian and his family have lived on the road in an RV. And this is not your first rodeo. This is not your first RV. But so you've been here before. And what you can do, everybody that's watching, you can go to, and I'm going to post this in the comment section. You can go to, and sometimes it's hard for me to talk and write at the same time, but it's www.foggm.org. And there is a giving link there. So I'm just going to type, you can give to the RV project, we'll just call it project, and everybody should know that. And you can go to www.foggm.org, and you can find the giving link, and you can give there. What I would like you to do also, okay, yeah, I can't do that, Apostle Jermaine, but I'll tell you what, if somebody can post your Cash App or other ways that people can give to your ministry, we need to do that in the course of this broadcast.
They can also give straight through Messenger too. Facebook Messenger allows it, and I can put in my PayPal, Cash App as we're talking here.
Yeah, PayPal, Cash App, all of that. And then, yes, we personally love Facebook Messenger because there's no fee to you and no fee to us when we
Yeah.
withdraw it. It goes directly to our bank account. And so that's always a good way to give. Some of our students that can give that way, but we also have a variety of ways, methods for giving. So don't send any money to us. If you do by mistake, we'll forward it on. But send it to Apostle Brian, to their website, or to these other
Yes.
ways of giving, so that you can bless them. And what I would like to see, I'm not saying I have a word from God or anything. I'm just sharing with you my heart. My heart is I
Yes.
would like to see you come out of this debt free. And because, when you have a family that sacrifices all, my wife has sacrificed everything. She didn't go into retirement. She went out of retirement right into, staying full time in the ministry. And
Yes.
she runs our school. Her and I together, especially her, work more hours than just about most people that I know. But I would just say this, that uh, it's just my heart. It's just my heart that these folks would come out of this debt free, because they have a family that has given their lives for the ministry also, and it is a joy. Jesus went for joy, went to the cross,
Yes.
despising all shame, all criticism, all pointing of the fingers. The preacher riding around in a big fancy RV. Who cares what people think? I mean, that's really not the point. We're talking about spreading the gospel. That's why we invest the hours that we do. Why that you invest the hours on the road traveling
That's right.
that you do, is just so that people can be blessed, and increase. Now, I want to move from there to
Amen.
our conversation tonight, because the thing about it is, you've been it's almost been like this tour in Oregon, Washington, California, in Redding, which Redding is just not too far over the Oregon line. But you've been
Yes.
doing this Quantum Grace conference, and
Yes.
I've been seeing bits and pieces when I can, as I can. And I know one of your favorite scriptures is Grace built her house, or wisdom built her house,
Yes.
and so on. But tonight we're talking about horizontal grace, and
Yes.
when we first talked about that being what we were going to discuss, I really wasn't sure how to title it, so I just titled it Horizontal Grace. And then thinking,
Sure.
well, horizontal grace, what in the world is that? Well, as I was advertising the show today, I was thinking about, and this is the picture that's been in my mind the whole time. It's been, I come from the West Coast. We have, when our children were young, we have vacation to Pismo Beach. We were married. Our honeymoon was on at Monterey Bay, and so we've seen the ocean. We lived in the valley, but we've been to the ocean. And so you think about the sea, and of course, if you can't go to the ocean, you certainly can watch television. And if you can't watch television, get on your computer, on your phone. You can see the sea, especially when it's calm. Way out in the distance, there's what is called the horizon. And the horizon, I could say the horizon is horizontal, but that would be saying the same thing. The horizon runs from right to left, east
Yes.
to west, but it's right to left, or depending on where you're at on the waters. And the thing I want to make a point about is that it flows from one side to the next side. Well, the idea of this is that it's called participation in the body.
Yes.
Now, that's not about receiving an offering or asking you to give tonight. And if you're watching this video after it's recorded, you'll still hear this same message. Um, and so, I know that when we talked about this, there was an area about some of the things we go through, some of the hardships we face. And
Yes.
sometimes I can appreciate what you said. I'm not doing the conference. I quit. I'm just going to
Yeah.
focus on the motorhome, the RV, because I remember the few times that I've come in and put my Bible on the shelf and said, I'm done. I quit. And
Oh
then
yeah.
you pick it right up and you go again. But I've quit so many times that what I've learned is I really don't know how to quit. I don't know how to give up. But when we talk about the human experience with all of its ups and downs, and from that, we find that there was a strength that was in us the whole time. We didn't think it was our strength. It's like you bargaining with God, and I've done that. I've made man, I've made deals with God over 48 years of ministry. And his plan was the end result every time, even though I was thinking that I was getting away with something because I made a deal with God. But um, but out of that point, what seems to be weakness to you, there is a hidden strength that we really weren't aware of at that moment because we were so distracted. We were focused on other things. And all of a sudden, when we really didn't want to, we were able to minister strength to someone else who was really in a worse situation than we were. And so I'll just read this scripture, then get you going on this tonight. Uh, Ephesians 3, verse 2 in the New King James, and I've got it in a couple of translations, but it says, if indeed you have heard of the dispensation. Now, this word dispensation can also be translated as stewardship in some other versions. You've heard of this dispensation of the grace of God, which was given to me for you. Now, the Apostle Paul, this heathenistic, very well educated, but heathenistic, killing Christians, dragging people out of their homes, putting them in jail, just because the Roman governors would assign him to that. I can't say that Paul was ultimately just this from birth bad guy, but he did what he thought he was supposed to do out of the moment, and in that weakness, something happened to him, and a complete life transformation, especially the road to Damascus encounter for Paul. And I always think about this bubble of spirit that Paul has just caught away. He just inserted into this bubble of spirit, and here Jesus and him sits down in the Indian powwow position. And for however long that period of time is, for the guys that were outside, it was probably just a split second. But for Paul and for Jesus delivered to Paul, Saul at the time, a wealth of information that revolutionized everything that he was doing just probably a day or two before that. And so he was given this grace to within him that he was able to impart to other people. So it really was a horizontal ministry. Ministry is really not my praying. Okay, I mean, I understand prayer, I understand communicating with the Father, but it's hard for me to get the vertical vision anymore, because I don't see God as up in heaven. Right. So I'm not praying, trying to get my prayers through the ceiling or trying to get God to come down. He lives in me. So everything's about vertical. And so as we minister to one another and the Lord ministers to us, it really is, as you have said so many times, the many-membered body of the one ministering to the one, that joint that needs to be supplied at whatever moment. So bring us in from there, and we'll just flow with this.
Well, kind of to set the stage here for where I want to go is, I hear a lot about it's all about Jesus. It's not about us. It's all about Jesus, and that's true if you know that Jesus is a multi-membered body. But if Jesus is only an individual, then what happens is we strive to put God first and obey him at the expense of one another. And this is what happens a lot of times in the church, is it's all about the me and God thing. And when really it's always been an us and a we. You can't even find in scripture where it says, count it all joy by yourself when you fall into trials. It says, count it all joy, brethren. When you're dying in him and raising in him, it doesn't say I died in him and raised in him. It says we died in him and raised in him. So there's always an us and a we. It's always about the riches of the glory of the inheritance in the saints. And so what happens is because we have been kind of conditioned by the church to have an outward appearance of holiness while we're dying on the inside, because we're doing it all by ourselves. We really, a lot of the church doesn't understand what grace is. They're crying out to God, give me grace, give me grace. they're coming boldly to the throne of grace. I remember praying that all the time. I come boldly to the throne of grace. Like somehow I was struggling as there was not enough grace going around.
Yeah.
And so I was always wondering, why do these people have no problems, but I have all the issues? And for a long time, I used to look at, I'd go to church and everybody be smiling and blessed and didn't have a care in the world. And I'd be carrying these burdens, all this self-evaluation because everything looked good. Everybody was doing good but me. And so I thought, what's my problem? How come I just can't cut it?
Yeah.
I mean, Christianity is supposed to be the one place you can cut it, right? And I couldn't cut it there. That was my mindset. And it took me a long time to understand that a lot of what I was viewing was they too were dying on the inside in the way in which they were perceiving their life in God and struggling, but they couldn't be honest. That was supposedly wrong to tell people where you were really at least
Right.
where you were feeling. And I used to get in trouble because I had no filters, and I would just tell people where I was at. And so I was always trying to measure up, or I would just be too self-condemned that I couldn't do what everybody else was doing, that I just wanted to give up. So it's either perform to be like everybody else or just give up and throw in the towel. And I'd go back and forth in that. And my testimony, I had a lot of ups and downs for the first 17 years of ministry. And it wasn't until, the Lord really began to show me that I was a grace bearer and that he had called me to be a grace bearer, and that all the things I walked through that I thought was just loss, weakness, a waste of my time, another mess up, all of that then is now some of the greatest trophies in my life now. It's the place where the sound I carry shifts people that are walking through similar things. And so horizontal grace is simply realizing not only are we a corporate body, but we are walking in each other's shoes, and that grace is coming through seeing somebody else's endurance as well as doubts and weaknesses, but seeing the Father's grace uphold them and help them walk through that process is what shifts all the people that are witnessing it. That's what causes them to turn and behold it. And so, Paul makes that statement in Ephesians 3. He says, if you've heard of the dispensation of the grace of God, which is given to me to you word. And then he talks about revelation, how that by revelation he made known unto me the mystery.
Yes.
And so when you're dealing with mysteries, what you're dealing with is unsurety and unknowns. We always tend to think mysteries are like, wow, the mysteries of Christ. And yeah, that's when it opens up and it's no longer a mystery. And we're like, finally, I got the revelation. But basically what he's saying here is I've understood my journey. I've caught the theme of what I was carrying in all the opposites in my life. And now what was once what once looked like an interruption to the things of God is now an eruption of the things of God through him to those that he was sent to. And this is a big part of what I believe is coming into our sonship in this season, in which we're going to begin to get the Father's perspective of our history. And when that happens, we're not going to have to practice what we preached. We're going to preach what's been practiced. We're going to realize that we're not even carrying our gospel, we're carrying somebody else's. And so, because you can relate, I know in my life, when I get in front of people, the one thing that I look for now, I don't look for a word from the Lord or an anointing or any of that. I simply tap into that which once was devastation, where the Father has interpreted it as revelation. And the thanksgiving and the gratitude that I can find in that place, I can find that person in the room. Even if it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, because the Father only leads to you those where you have currently are walking or have walked. because that's the place in which you can relate without judgment because you've walked through it. And when you have the Father's perspective, there is a compassion that carries a sound in which you're carrying their identity, their gospel, their inheritance in that moment for them to awake and realize not only are they not alone in their situation, but you become a signpost of who they are in the future by your testimony, by what the Father has done in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were talking, I was thinking about this. A lot of times when we were going through some really difficult situations, we would study because we were looking for answers, and
Yes.
we would get these revelations that would be really an explanation of Scripture pertaining to what I was going through, and I'll preach that because I'm really looking to work through that. And it sounds like when I'm preaching that I've got all the answers, I got this whole thing figured out, and people actually will think that about us sometimes. But
Oh, yeah.
it's just really that I'm just trying to step this out and piece this together, because for me, some of my greatest revelation is not just when I'm studying, but while I'm ministering. Boom, there
Yes.
comes another level of something. And but when you actually have practiced it, it's become a way of life for you. You get it, you understand it. You're never going back to the place you were before. Now you're preaching from a place that says, look, I've been there and I don't walk there anymore, and here's why, and I want to help you through this. And so, yeah, it's like life is no longer a mystery, and the mind of my Father is no longer a mystery, and we get it. But here's the thing: there's so many people out there still today that don't get it. Okay,
Yeah.
and they're still struggling because they've been through some hardships and they're looking for some answers,
Yes.
and somebody's preaching and it really sounds good to them because they were facing this mess, and it's like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, and what am I going to do? And what this guy's saying is really good because it's really blessing me, and it's saying, boy, those are my answers. And they'll take that and they'll begin to try to walk that out and stumble a bit because it wasn't a revelation to them. It was just a sweet, a loud noise, a sweet, a loud sounding cymbal. It just made a lot of noise, and it spoke to them. But in time, they're going to get it. In time,
Yes.
they're going to awaken to that as truth. I was looking at this, Ephesians 3, and I'm just looking at the Passion Translation real quickly, and I just want to just pull verse 1 into this, because Paul says, beloved friends, because of my love for Jesus Christ, I am now his prisoner, meaning he just that committed, that bound him, for the sake of all of you who are not Jews, so
Yes.
that you will hear the gospel that God has entrusted to me to share with you. And then he goes on and talking about the revelation and the mystery and so on. And so there was a rhyme behind the reason. Paul had become so infused with something, and let's just face it. Paul went through more people, more things than anybody in the Gospels. Uh, Shipwrecked, beaten multiple
Yes.
times, etc., etc. And yet Paul even didn't live a lot of years. He died in his late 60s, maybe 67, somewhere in there. So, for that day and time, biblical days, could have lived a lot longer. John lived till his 90s. But the point is that even in spite of how long Paul was actually visible in this realm, Paul had went through some things, and he'd come to understand that, what, none of this is about me, but it's about me. It's not me, but it's me. It's Christ, but it's not Christ. It's about all of us together as one.
Yes.
And he's saying, this thing I got, it isn't just for me, it's for you too. And so I want to give this to you. And if I have to give it to you 10 different ways for you to get it just one way,
Yes.
and that's what happens in conferences sometimes, and we're just pouring our heart out. We're just every possible angle that we can. It's like I'm thinking about, you take 5 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of teaching in a course in World Bible School University. And it's like the whole time, it's just like, I just want you to get this one thing, but I'm going to give it to you 10 or 15 different ways so that you can just grab the one thing. Because at one level, you're going to say something that's going to spark something in somebody else, and they're going to say, yes, I get it now.
Yes.
The revelation, that mystery of that revelation is now becoming unveiled to me, and all because God entrusted someone with something, with a revelation, and it wasn't just for hoarding it up; it was for giving it to other people.
That's right. That's right. You have two different kinds of preachers out there. I mean, if we look at this revelation just within ministers and ministries, you have two different kinds. You have those who have a revelation of what they've walked through,
Mm-hmm.
and they're releasing liberty and grace. And you have those that have a rebuttal from what they've walked through, and they're releasing judgment and criticism. We see that today. I was talking to an individual that really struggled with some of the stuff I'm teaching on us choosing which generation to be sent to, and that we said we nobody took our life from us. We laid it down of our own accord. If you put us in the same place with everything else Jesus said was who we are and how we were sent. And this individual was a little bit upset and said, "You mean I chose to walk through this abuse and I chose to walk through all of that?" And and didn't really want to receive what I had, but had this need for justice, and really had an issue that everybody was included. But what about justice? There needs to be justice. People can't just get away with all this stuff. And I said, look, there is justice on a natural level for natural consequences and natural actions. Don't spiritualize natural things. I mean, there is a spiritual reality in the natural, but when it comes to acting out of a mistaken identity, that is all in the carnal level. It is not in a spiritual level. And I said, and so in the spirit, nobody needs justice because you've been freely justified. But at a human level, we're all looking for justice. And I believe once we kind of can understand that the things that we've walked through that we think we need justice for are actually because we loved not our lives to the point of death.
Yeah.
It really makes all the difference. For me, I was the biggest one that needed justice. I'm telling you, I was a perfectionist. It's all about justice. I'm going to prove it, all of these things. And but I'll tell you now, I don't need any justice. I don't need any vindication. I don't need any of those things. And it's because all the things that I thought were ripping me off was actually setting me up to walk like Jesus walked, to experience the heart of the Father for the ones he was sent me to. I mean, what an honor to be ordained by God for mankind. That's the priestly realm in Hebrews 5. To be surrounded with infirmities and sins that you might have compassion. And so a lot of times, and I believe we do this blindfolded on purpose. We put on this blindfold when we come into the human experience, and we take personally everything that's going on in our lives and in our minds, because we do think it's just about us or what we should have done, could have done, would have done. But ultimately, eventually that flips over as what Paul would say, for the sake of the elect, I suffer these things. And he was speaking, I believe that's in Timothy. And so when I realized that the deepest love I could ever show mankind would be to take on their belief system of what they walked through until the appointed time in which that veil lifted and I now carried the keys and the sound, because there is a sound, there is a frequency. I've been preaching this stuff for a long time, and I've seen change here and there, but when it shifted in my mind, completely shifted over, and I received liberation. I mean, we can speak truths we're trying to believe, and then we're speaking truths out of knowing what we believe.
Yes.
And, Kay Fairchild, she did a post on that, which I saw about the difference between faith and knowing. And I've been getting the same thing over this last month is, you can't try to have faith in a place you've never been. You can't. That's not faith. It's the beginning of a journey into faith, but it's really not faith. You can trust that the Father knows what he's doing through that. But other than that, the real faith, or the power of faith that changes people, comes in the experience of walking out the unknown until you know beyond a shadow of a doubt the reality of God in what was once unknown. And that becomes the point of contact where you see the faith of God truly manifest without a contradiction, or shall I say, without an opposite, without duality. And so, when it comes to walking in each other's shoes, I really believe this, and you've heard me say this many a times on your program, is, we spoke often one to another in the fear of the Lord before time. A book of remembrance was written. That remembrance there is our inheritance here. That remembrance is what we entrusted to one another. So when you speak a word that hits somebody, it's not just that you walked into their history by accident and now have a revelation. It's that you walked through it on purpose because you made a covenant before time to walk in each other's shoes in time, and to carry each other within one another as an inheritance that would eventually be exchanged consciously, in which we would truly understand what it means to be fitly framed together as a habitation of God in the Spirit.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, I don't know that I could look at every experience I've ever had as a, some things that you don't want to tell anybody.
Yeah.
But there's some heavy stuff that happens in our lives that we do personalize it, and we internalize it, and it causes emotional trauma, and we become an adult basket case of some sort. Not and especially the most terrible basket case is the adult basket case that's in ministry. I mean that with all sincerity, but it happens. But it's not to be, you don't want to really personalize it so much, even though it does personally happen to you. It's because what you walk through is going to help somebody else down the road who has walked through something similar that they don't understand. And now it's been years for you, and you've kind of looked back and you've kind of dealt with it, and you've gotten some understanding. And it's like, okay, I didn't enjoy that part of the journey, but it's been a really great journey because now I understand some stuff. And, I think about the Apostle Paul a whole lot, and we're talking about him tonight. And I do want to get to Proverbs before we're done. And I know we took a while to talk about the RV, but I want to talk about that some more just before we're done. Paul said in Galatians 2:20, and I know this scripture is I'm fixing to do a whole series on Galatians 2:20 in school, but Paul said, I was crucified with Christ, yet it's not I. And it's no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. The King James is probably the most prominent interpretation of this one verse, especially a phrase here that is used in every Greek and Hebrew interpretation that you can find out there. And it's this part, I live by the faith of the Son. He says, I live by the faith in the Son of God. It actually should read, I live by the faith of the Son of God.
Yes.
I've often thought about, if I live by his faith, then why am I spending all these years getting all these faith books trying to build my faith so I can have great faith? If I'm living by his faith, there could be no greater faith. And so you really have to look at, and that's why Dr. K's post was so significant, is because you really have to understand that for me, there's more than one side of faith. There becomes, for me, it's like a life of convincing in my soul and becoming persuaded of something, which is one of the definitions for faith. And so I become persuaded of things so that I can partake of his faith, because his faith is a sure thing. Okay,
Yes.
I've never been a gambler. I've never laid money on any table. Never been to a casino. That doesn't make me extra holy or anything. I am who I am because God said so.
Yes.
But I've never done any of that. But I would just say this, that if I were going to bet on something, I would want it to be an absolute 100% sure thing. And the faith of Jesus is a sure thing. Now, the
Yes.
best that I can do in the process, even though I have his faith in me, is to get my belief system in order, and everything that I discover about him that is eternal truth, become persuaded of that, so that I can hook up with his faith. And so everything I'm persuaded of that is eternal truth is now a sure thing, because I'm hooked up with a sure thing, the faith of someone who is the surety. Holy Spirit's the
Yes.
surety, or the one who steps in, is the go-between. He makes it all come together. And so I just love that. So there's nothing you can go through, that if you don't personalize this in the whole process, and spend 30 years of your adulthood in counseling and therapy, and trying to figure out, here's the big question: why did they do that to me? Why did this
Yeah.
happen to me? Why did I have to go through that? If there really is a God that loves me, why did he? And you go through all this mind-wrenching stuff until you're an emotional basket case. And sometimes I've visited people in stress centers and in mental institutions, because they couldn't deal with just the one thing. Proverbs 20 verse 5 says, counsel in the heart of men is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Tell us how does this all tie in?
Well, I think it also says in Proverbs 3 that by wisdom he founded the heavens, and by understanding he founded the earth. And so, one of the things that we need, since we were wisdom who built a house before time, to unveil the remembrance of it in time, we can't really even partner what's been unveiled unless we have understanding. And understanding actually comes through a lot of the contradictions and opposites in your life. This is where you get the understanding. This is where we can be understanding to one another. I mean, I couldn't understand somebody losing a child until I lost a child. I mean, I could grieve with them, I could feel bad for them, but I couldn't come alongside and partner with them. Have you ever noticed that when two humans bond, especially if they just met and they spark up a conversation, you'll find that they bond more on trauma that they have in common rather than success that they have in common. Okay. Or mountaintop experiences. They
Sure.
tend to connect more in a valley experience because now somebody hears them. They're not alone. And I truly believe that, uh, when it comes to in the heart of man are deep waters, but a man of understanding will draw them out, is that when you've walked through all of these opposites that you had to take personally at the time, because other people have taken them personally, and even though they might not have been personal, we can't control what other people do, and some circumstances we can't control. And I know that the church has attempted to try to build doctrines to create some, perfect paradise here on earth with name it, claim it, blab it, grab it. And I know that at some point it will be manifest like that. But until then, I said, Lord, I've done all the claiming and decreeing things to come into alignment with what is convenient for me, and it's not worked at least 75% of the time. So therefore, how can I walk through this, have peace without having to change anything around me, right? And that became the posture that gave me understanding that I don't have to change my environment to walk in complete peace and complete fulfillment in the midst of it, because my environment is actually carrying a revelation of everything I need in my sonship. It says all creation is groaning to manifest as the sons of God. And so, in one sense, it's groaning. When I'm not seeing clearly, everything's just groaning. It's just a big complaint all around me when nothing's going right. But once I come out of that duality mindset, I begin to see that everything God made was good. and nothing can truly threaten me. It can only unveil who I am. That to me is the beginning of understanding. And so in the sense of contradictions and in the sense of drawing out of one another. And so I'll give you an example. You know, when I'm connecting with people, and we don't just do conferences, we're on the phone day and night, counseling people, ministering to people all over the world. And I mean, I get at least 100 messages on Messenger a day. Okay. I'm
Understand.
still way behind. I do my best, but I can't answer them all. But one of the reasons why people are drawn to us is, and it's because they're in something they believe is traumatic. And I don't want to lighten that, because I know in my past it was trauma. It was traumatizing to me.
Sure.
But
Sure.
when I came out of it, it was the greatest bliss ever of why I needed to walk through that. It had nothing to do with me proving I was spiritual or God testing me to see if I was worthy to be in his presence. You know, it was really about the fact that I was carrying an inheritance for other people. And I was laying my life down. That was the unconditional love. When I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and all of this was happening, and I couldn't act right, and I couldn't perceive where God was, that was where I loved the most. You know, because that's where I took on the mindset. The same way Jesus came to earth and he put on the mindset of all humanity, and then he walked through the contradictions, and he only did what he saw the Father doing, and he pulled the Father's answer into every wrong conclusion of humanity's understanding. So that when he died and rose again on Golgotha, the place of the skull, he released into the atmosphere that awakening that would cause the mind of Christ to begin to manifest in humanity. And so when I'm ministering to somebody, one of the things that that the Father really touches in my heart, I can see me in them. I can see how I used to think, or who I was, or even present things. And what I do is, in vulnerability, because I'm not threatened, I'm not ashamed of my history. See, as long as you have shame in your history, you will not be able to be vulnerable to even see the deep waters in somebody. The deep waters is the deep mysteries, the answer they need, but it's also in their mind where they're drowning. Many are drowning in the depth of the mysteries of God that is their victory, but they don't see it as that. They see it as something happened to them. They're threatened. They, you know, whatever it is that they feel ashamed about or inadequate in. And so unless you have been in that place, you cannot draw out the deep waters, not just the woundedness, but the opposite, the flip side of that, which is the treasures in darkness. And so, you know, it says, not only by understanding did he found the earth, and not only is it in the heart of man are deep waters, and a man of understanding draws out, but Proverbs talks about the sister of wisdom being understanding, who grew up beside him and watched the Father unveil the heavens and the earth. And it says that that her delight was with the sons of men. And so there is definitely a connection there in which you don't struggle to love people anymore when you have when you're carrying that understanding that everything that you have walked through is about carrying the grace of God. You're not going to go trying to reach up to heaven to get God to give you grace. My grace is sufficient for you, he told Paul with the thorn in his flesh, right? Paul made it clear. He says, I boast in my weaknesses that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And so, you know, it was his boast in his weaknesses that was what set the stage for relatability, for people's walls to come down, for hearts to touch, so that there could be a bridge for the revelation he was now carrying to be received. You know, I can give you a glorious revelation. Some revelations I'm still preaching today, I preached 15 years ago. Great stuff. Too bad nobody could receive it back then. And the reason why is because I didn't have any understanding of what I had walked through that looked like shame, but was really grace. And so, Adam and Eve, when they ate, they were ashamed, they ate of the tree, they covered themselves. But what does love do? Love means I can now let go of the shame and I can cover you with the grace that I've been carrying. That's love that
Yeah.
that hides a multitude of sin.
Yeah. Jesus despising the shame went ahead
Yes.
for joy. Uh, his fellow man, his pride and joy went to the cross. So, I was thinking, that's why this is so important. You ever been in a conference where someone was ministering, and all of a sudden you had this revelation, this word, this thought burning in you. You really wanted to share, but it was such a one man show. There was no way you were going to
Yeah.
get through the ushers and the bodyguards and everybody to get to the front to share it. I've been there so many times, and I was thinking about that before the show tonight, and I was thinking about how that's why what we do today is so important. That yes, there is a time where people need to sit down and they need to
Yeah.
hear what the one the eternal Christ speaking through a person at that moment has to say. That ministry model is still valid. Uh, but let me just say, but there's a purpose in that, and that's to help people get from point A to point B. But there are times also where we'll have meetings where everybody can have a say, even if it sounds as goofy as goofy can be, just because they need to be trained to release what's in them out, even if they really have no deep type revelation. But I think it's so important that this thing about our experiences that we took for shame, that we should have realized that he took all guilt, he took all shame,
Yes.
and released it from us, because guilt and shame happens in the mind, in the thinking, not in the
Yes.
body, not in spirit. Spirit is 100% the fullness of God. The body
That's
is
right.
whatever the mind dictates it to be. But the soul just, we take on and harbor so many things, when really we need to learn to release them, let them go, and realize that, hey, there's something going on that's not about me. It's going to come out in the wash, in the end, and it's going to smell fresh. It's going to smell clean. It's going to smell like it should, and it's going to benefit my fellow man. And I think
Yes.
you're right. We were talking before the show. We're already at the top of the hour, but I just want to get this out in real quickly. We were talking at the top of the show about sometimes we don't seem as compatible with some of God's kids as we do with others.
Yes.
And so sometimes there's some social distancing required
Yes.
to steal something from the present way that's going on. But
That's
the
right.
fact is that ultimately, okay, God is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but he's not willing that any he's not willing that any should suffer, but all come to repentance. And while you're
Yes.
suffering, while you're going through this hard thing, and you're feeling so ashamed, and you're so angry, and you're so bitter, just realize that God has already from before time began, created a way of escape for you, so that the
Yes.
thing in you that he's doing can shine and can speak volumes to somebody else. And so
Yes.
that really is a great word tonight, Apostle, on vertical brace. And I know if you've been watching, folks, and you've been keeping up with Apostle Brian's conferences, um, whether they're held in a house or in a church or in a park really is insignificant. Quantum grace and
Yes.
relationship, and that's why somebody comes and hands you an amount of money that's a hefty down payment on
Yes.
another RV. So for everybody listening, I just posted and I'm going to do it again. Okay, I'm just going to post it again to give to the RV project. You can go here. Also, there is the Facebook Messenger where you can go there, and
Yes.
there's other PayPal you'll find listed in the notes of our meeting tonight.
Yes.
Uh, I really have it in my heart because I've watched. So this is why World Bible School University is tuition free. Okay,
Yes.
we do not want to see ministers have this big student loan out there that takes them years and years and years of hardship trying to pay back
Yes.
when they really do and desire an education. Well, here you're traveling around the U.S. Ministering to people and trying to make provision for your team, and it becomes difficult when you've got a family, and now you're looking into
Yes.
taking bringing in another member of the family, this daughter, and so hey, need more room. Well, uh,
Yes.
and folks, let me just say, I know vehicles, houses, RVs, brand new, cost tons and tons of dollars.
Yes.
And here you guys are going after a used one, and you know it's still a lot of money, but it's a fraction compared. So I just have
Yes.
it on my heart that you guys that this project comes out debt free, and um,
Amen.
you know I think that's the Father's heart too. Let me tell you, last Tuesday night, if anybody gets a chance to go back and watch on my timeline, Healed Because God Said So, right at the close of the show, in the last 5 to 10 minutes, Dr. Michael Porter shared a revelation. He talked about Elijah and the widow of Zarephath, and Elijah being the male, the masculine part
Yes.
of this story was wisdom, and the feminine was the widow, who was love. And when wisdom and love got together, you know what the end result was? The cruise of oil and the meal barrel never run dry ever
Oh, that's
again.
good.
And
That is
I'm telling
powerful.
you what, it was the end of the show. No one could say anything. So I'm not telling it like Michael Porter did, but um, you know, it's so important. So say whatever you'd like to say in closing, and then we'll
Well, what I would say to those of you that are looking, is thinking you might not have the grace, or where is the grace? Grace isn't always a good feeling. Grace is also the power to endure. Uh, but I would say this: never try to protect yourself if you want to walk in grace. In fact, allow yourself to be loved even more. Give yourself over to that. Realize that the circumstances you can't control uh, aren't going to control you unless you try to gain control. Instead, simply look for what the Father is wanting to do and give room for Him to come in and reveal His goodness and His faithfulness
mm,
through the supernatural, through other people. Uh, and I guarantee you, you will realize grace. You will realize a grace that you didn't know before. And, you know, the Father wants to pick up the tab. He's packed your lunch. There's nothing lacking. But we have to experience that. So we have to be put in a position to where we can't do it in our human reasoning and need the Father to reveal His goodness. And so, if
yeah.
I could leave that with you, allow yourself to be loved, and just simply drink of that love, no matter what is going on, and you'll find that grace will abound. And last thing that you had said earlier, Bishop, was about how important it is for others to be able to share. And that's exactly what we're doing. When we go around, I might teach, I might do conferences, but off camera and sometimes on camera, we are all day and all night with groups of people interacting and flowing, and not just activating them in the gifts of the Spirit, but having real conversations. And I'll tell you, this has happened everywhere we've gone. It just happened again in Reading. People that have been on the outside looking in, they just feel like they don't belong, said, "This is the first time I feel like I've met my family. I feel like I'm with my tribe. This first time I feel like I'm a part of something, that I'm important." And I tell you, that's why we travel. That's why we keep going. It's because of seeing the looks on people's faces as the pain just falls off, and as they realize they're a part of this. They are loved and received, and they are complete in Christ. And so that to me is worth 1,000 deaths. And I will continue to lay my life down to see that happen. Amen.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I believe that. I believe that whether you were going tomorrow to look at another motorhome, a newer and bigger motorhome or not, you would continue to minister. Um,
Yes.
and that's just part of the gifting and the calling and the grace that's on a person who's genuinely called of God. You'll walk from, as I did, from as far as human years, 17 to 65, and still have a heart and a passion to continue gaining revelation and still teaching and sharing with others, because it's so needed today. So everybody, just please, and I'm not going to, beg and all of that, but I just want you to give. If I do understand that this is one of those times where there's people out of work and people still dealing with the pandemic, and kids are trying to go back to school now in our few states around us, and then more cases of COVID seem to be breaking out. My sister just got out of the hospital with pneumonia and COVID at the same time, and there's some real stuff going on. I do get it, but if you and there's a greater demand being at home, because there's this need to spend, and there's this need to do something that touches the outside world, and I get all of that. But set something aside and give toward this project. It doesn't take 100 people with $100 and some with $500 and some with $1,000 that really would totally eliminate this debt. And maybe you're a person out there listening to this broadcast and you can take care of the whole thing yourself. I'm not discouraging you from that. I don't want anybody else to not give because of that possibility. But let's just give and be a blessing to Brian Christian Ministries, and I know it's Father of Glory Global Ministries .org. You can give there and so on. So thank you so much, buddy, for being on tonight.
Hey, thank you, Bishop. It's always a pleasure.
And I love that this video will be in the archives. It'll be embedded in Facebook and in the archives for years and years and years to come. We have almost probably over 1,000 videos on our YouTube channel, and a lot of time and effort went into that. And it's so that people can go back years ago and hear what we did teach and see. Somebody asked me the other day, and I said, you need to go back to the beginning and watch the progression of what God did as Revelation unveiled. So everybody watching tonight, give. Thank you so much for being on. Share with somebody else. Click like, then share. Put it on your timeline. Encourage your friends to put it on their timeline, and we'll get the message around, and this need will be completely eliminated. And one way or the other, you're going to look at a motorhome tomorrow, and God's going to say, this is the one, or this is not the one. You're going to know.
Amen.
Amen.
That's right.
Amen. Well, listen, love on the family for us. And
definitely.
Yeah. And baby girl is coming.
That's right. Trinity Glory. We already have a name.
Trinity Glory. Wow.
That's right.
Trinity Glory. All right. Well, hey, everybody, join us in the morning at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for Friday morning conversations. And have a great evening, and we'll see everybody soon. Blessings.
Bless you guys.
Bye-bye.